A lot of you have been asking me to do a video on the army system that's coming up for Europa Universalis 5, and I've been delaying this for a couple of reasons that I'm going to be explaining a little bit more in depth as we go along in this video. And before we start with the video, I want to make it really clear, EU5 is not going to have the same army system as Victoria 3. In fact, it's almost a copy-paste of EU4 as it stands right now, with some alterations and some added things from Imperator Rome, from CK3 even, and in my opinion, we might even see some total war style battles as a result of the new changes to the combat system in EU5. I'm gonna explain more what I mean by that in the video itself after we read what exactly Johan says, so I can back up everything I say with actual information from the dev diary. Before we continue, if you enjoy videos about EU5 with the latest and in general history videos, then don't forget to subscribe, would really appreciate it, and I promise in return I'm only gonna be stealing your wallet once a month when you're getting your paycheck. If you enjoy strategy games as much as I do, then today's sponsor Instant Gaming is perfect for you. Right now there's a massive discount on Instant Gaming. For example, Victoria 3 is only €9.41 and EU4 is €10.81. It also has cross-platform availability, be it on PC, PlayStation, Xbox, or Nintendo, and the best part is that it's not just another CD key marketplace. They get their keys straight from authorized resellers. If you're not sure what to get, you can also just check by trending, bestseller, or even pre-order. So make sure to use the link in my description to get any game you like to get. I get a commission on every purchase and it would really help out the channel massively. There's actually two separate dev diaries regarding the army system. The first one we're going to go through here, and then the second one talks more about the logistics part. I would say that the entire unit and combat system is based on the mechanics of the EU series. After reading both of these a few times, I can tell you it's copy-pasted from EU4 with just different terms like frontage and schnaps like that, which is basically anyway. But we'll get into that as we progress. We've taken influences on combat and organization of armies from March of the Eagles. Yes, that is very true actually. That's probably one of the best depictions of organization and combat systems out of most grand strategy games that Paradox has put out already, and that's great because we get the best of all grand strategy games, right? Ideas of the connection between regiments and pops from Victoria and logistics and automation from Imperator to create what we believe is the best system of all. I fully agree with that. I do think that EU5, with the current system that it has for armies and for combat, it is going to be better than any other grand strategy game, including Hearts of Iron 4, if they do something which we don't have a confirmation of yet, namely if they have a means of being able to select the weapons and the armor for each individual regiment. If you could do that, then this game is going to be the greatest game ever, honestly. If you could make it so that you have flintlock for one regiment, swords for the other one, because you're running out of flintlock, right? I don't think that's going to be the case though, considering how the trade system is going to work, but maybe I'm wrong, and I hope that I am wrong. Now, he does mention the earlier Tinto talk where he introduced for the first time the levy system, the standing army system, how one regiment's going to start with 100 men, and then you can upgrade this to more, up to 3,200 men in each regiment for infantry, and then cavalry, artillery, auxiliary units will have different sizes. It doesn't make sense to have 1,000 units in an artillery regiment as we have in EU4 right now, since historically it was like 50 dudes and like 3 artillery pieces up until the 1700s in most of these regiments. So 1,000 would not be very accurate, and they're aware of that, and I really hope that the amount of units in especially artillery units is going to be very small, right, manpower wise at least, and that it's going to have a high cost maintenance, and that you're going to have less artillery pieces per regiment to make it more historic. Now, in this also dev diary, we learned that and I'm just refreshing your mind in case you already watched my old video, the levies, which is going to be basically pops directly recruited from your country, is based off of the population size that you have, and then levies will have different compositions based on whether they're part of the lower strata, the nobility, and so on. Then we also learned that there's companies of mercenaries that are separate from the main standing armies and the levies, and then the manpower is going to be very important. You're going to be getting manpower from specific buildings, and in order to maintain armies, you're going to need more of these buildings, because each army has a passive manpower decrease monthly. Even if you're not doing nothing with them, you're going to lose manpower based on the amount of regiments that you have. So if you have 10 regiments, let's say each of them costs 1 manpower, these numbers are not final, so keep that in mind, then you're going to need at least one building that produces plus 10 monthly manpower. In the case here, the Kurultai produces 50 monthly manpower, and it requires 5,000 peasants to maintain, so keep that in mind. It also allows you to recruit regiments, so you cannot just recruit in every single province like you can in EU4. You can only recruit units in specific areas with a specific building in EU5. Another major thing to know from this dev diary is that we have systems like discipline, military tactics, army morale, and the combat ability or power, as it's called, for infantry, cavalry, artillery, and auxiliary units, because auxiliary will represent, as we learned in the more recent dev diary, stuff like caravans. What are they called? Let's see, camp followers, not caravans, my bad. So camp followers is going to be a special auxiliary unit that will allow you to carry more food than just whatever the units themselves can carry, because the units themselves can only carry a very limited amount of food, so you can only survive for a few months with that army on the field unless you have a camp follower, which increases the amount of food that particular army can field. And look at that. See, requirements for construction: tin, copper, leather, metalworks, and then maintenance, you need medicaments, paper, metalworks, and leather, as well as 1 monthly manpower. And it's seen here as an auxiliary unit. It has its own individual stats, including food storage, which is 6. That is actually really big, because we see later that an army has 8 months food capacity, and that is 11.2. So that's one auxiliary can carry 6. That means 2 auxiliaries will let you have 8 months of food capacity. So if you want to have your army survive for 1 year, you need 3 caravans. So you need 3 camp followers for 1 year of food if you have this army composition. So that's for 4 horse archers, 9 step militia, and 1 uruguru bara garugudu. And then there's also other modifiers that apply to this. I actually really like this, because this means the wars that you're gonna have will be determined by not only where the enemy location is, what time of the year it is, because it's gonna be more food required in the winter, and the attrition is gonna be higher in the winter. And as we can see here, impact from current attrition. That means during winter, units are gonna consume significantly more food, and as such, you're not gonna be able to go around with your units as much as you would be able in summer, when you're likely gonna get significantly less attrition. Anyway, let's talk about the first dev diary, because I've basically just been going around the place right now. Johan mentions that regiments can be recruited in any location you have built the infrastructure to allow recruitment, like the Kurultai, the previous building. There's going to be other buildings that will allow recruitment also. The Kurultai is a specific one from the Mongols, obviously, and the hordes in general. Levies can be raised in any capital province, and mercenaries in any capital city or town. So that means if you have 10 provinces, you can raise 10 different levies in each of these provinces in the capital of said provinces. So in Paris would be one, whilst regular regiments go as low as 100 men at the start of the game and eventually can go up to 3,200. Remember that. Levies, which fight much less efficient, can be organized up to 1,000 per regiment from the start. The Chinese have levies of 1,500 at the start per regiment. Interesting. Why does it work like that? Well, calling up a levy as Poland, you get 11,000 men, but 110 regiments is a bit too much. Delhi, Mamluks, and others with 700 regiments are rather too much, and as usual, Yuan breaks everything, because they're gonna have millions of people, let's face it, where with low control and wrong culture, pulling up a levy and being forced to handle 1,800 regiment is a bit too much for most of us human beings. They're basically limiting the starting sizes of the regiments based on the amount of population that country has, so that it's easier for us to micro. I like that. I hope that they thought about the balance part, which I would assume that they did think about the balance part, but obviously numbers is still going to be king, especially in the early part, until you get some decent military tactics and advantages to make up for the number. When 2 armies that are hostile to each other are present in the same location, there are some things that will need to be explained. As in many other games, you have as much control over your armies as you want to, and you can move them around, reorganize them to your heart's content. This is specifically said here, so we know that it's not the same like VK3's combat system. EU5 is going to have, in essence, an upgraded version of EU4's military and combat system. With the granularity of the map, though, which means that considering how small every single province and how many provinces, or better yet locations, there are on the map, because units will move from one location to another, we could no longer use days as the smaller tick, but have to resort to hours as the time tick. The day ticks from 8 to 19 every day, and the remaining hours are skipped over, representing the fact that your army needs to rest and not always be on the move. Now, some worry that the game will be slower or the performance worse. Well, when you fight a war and you care about it, you probably play at a lower speed, but at max speed, the game should be as fast as EU4 and Imperator. So what this means is that, and here's one part of the total war bit that I was talking about earlier comes into play. Essentially, the different speeds you have, like you have 5 speeds in EU4. In EU5, the difference is going to be that the lowest speed is going to be so slow, you will be able to manage units in combat. I would assume. This, I think, is the first leak towards the fact that you probably will have the ability to move either on the combat screen, which I suppose will still be a thing, move the individual units on the combat screen, and then you obviously need hours to move them on the combat screen, so the lowest speed possible. Or maybe the main actual map, the units as they are positioned on the main map will have an impact. So say if you attack a unit from another province at the same time that they're fighting another unit, so say you have province A, province B, 2 units are fighting, and then you have a third province and you have another army that just came and joined into the battle. They can join late into the battle, and they can also flank from a side that unit that they're fighting with the other army. That might be a thing, because otherwise I cannot tell for the life of me why they would go for hours, considering the performance impact this would have and how much more it would lengthen the game itself. The only reason you would go for hours is if these two things are going to be a thing. And if these are a thing, then that means we have essentially Total War combat. Very archaic and very basic, not like actual Total War where you have individual units you're moving on the map, but still a lot more ability to move units and more in-depth tactical play in EU5 compared to EU4 because of this, because of the hour system. Now again, this is just me thinking this is why, not confirmed, so keep that in mind. We'll find out in the future once we learn more, obviously. However, we have something here that we will only tease about today and we'll talk about in future Tintel Talks, the powerful objective system that uses the same AI component as the AI itself uses. So we have here the military screen, we have the armies, navies, and objective. The objective screen essentially will let your army automatically do certain things like try and capture a specific area if you have, say, a massive army and you have a few of them set to automatically be managed, like in Imperator Rome, for example. An army is a group of regiments that are organized as a single entity. These can be led by a character who may or may not have traits for being a general. If they don't have a trait, they may get one after a large battle. So experience will give them traits, possibly, like in EU4, it's not a guarantee, but there's a chance of it. The ability of a character has a lot of impact on the military aspect, and each attribute has at least 3 different benefits. We have here Sir John's ability as a general, Sir John Mowbray. His abilities are based off of his mana points, okay? And I'm still going to call them mana points. I know Johan hates it, but I'm still going to do it because it is mana. Admin ability 36. As such, he gets army maintenance reduction, so armies can be cheaper if your general has more admin ability. Siege ability increase, so they can siege things faster, siege forts faster, and we learn about forts in the next dev diary, so stay tuned. Very important stuff there. Possible frontage. This is a big one too, because this is going to allow you to field more units in combat at the same time. And then correct section chance, I'm assuming means assigning the right unit to the right section of the front line, I would assume. Diplomatic ability, you have the army morale, which is the same like it is in EU4. Army initiative, which I'm assuming is the same like you have in March of the Eagles and in Hearts of Iron 4. And then unit food consumption, pretty self-explanatory. They consume 18.5 less food because they have 37 diplomatic ability. And then military ability, you have the movement speed of the army on the map itself. Discipline, basically how much more damage they deal and how much less damage they get from the enemies is what discipline determines, like in EU4. The regiments themselves can be deployed to one of 4 parts of an army. They can be in the center, they can be on the left flank, right flank, or they can be in reserve. While you can micromanage your army in detail, there are also ways to auto-balance your armies, like in Imperator Rome again. We often refer to one of these 4 parts as a section. Now we have here the Polish Great Army, of course. We have feudal levies and 1,000 size roughly for all of these levies, more or less. Some of these Conan infantry has only 812. Oh, it's actually saved the screenshot as Polish Army, cool. And then you have, aside from the formation, you have actions. This is a work in progress UI, so keep that in mind also. So how does combat work? There's a lot of similarities here with EU4, but we only have one type of main phase. Keep that in mind, that's very important too. But the dice roll is re-rolled as frequently as that game. Obviously, we still have dice rolls, goes without saying. Every single thing that happens between the different regiments is decided by dice rolls still. It's not the perfect perfect system, but it's better than VK3 system, let's face it. Which technically VK3 also has dice rolls, but they happen in the background and you don't see the dice rolls. You just see, well, you don't really see much, do you? You just see the advancing between left and right. The battle starts with the bombard phase, where any unit that can bombard, which is basically only artillery units, will be able to fire on the opposing army. The artillery will be able to damage units in the opposing section, so your left flank fires on the enemy's right flank, etc. If there are no units in the opposing section, it can fire at any sector that is not the reserve, so the reserves are safe. And the main phase of combat works like this. Each section tries to get as many units to engage as their maximum frontage allow. And remember that the frontage is also determined by the admin ability, so you have 36% more frontage for Mr. John over here. Also, what the hell is this? John's in charge of the Polish army? Hey, yo, what's going on here? What is he doing in Poland? Or did they just take screenshots from different countries to mess with us? Most of the time, every regiment has the same frontage value. They will attack their opposing sector until there are no possible units left there, and then they will hit enemies in the closest section. So that can be left, right, or reserve. Only engaged regiments will fight in the current round of combat, so that means the reserve will not fight. They will wait for the next round, and the regiment will try to fight another engaged regiment in the opposing section first. If there is none in an opposing section, they can attack any other section where a unit with a good flanking ability can do extra damage. The flanking ability is going to be a lot more important than it is in EU4 now. So how does a regiment engage then? Well, at each tick, they roll a dice and check against their initiative, and if they succeed, they then become engaged. This chance increases for every hour of combat. They will make you want to have every section of your army to have units that can engage quickly to allow your heavy hitters to get enough time to engage. Now, this may not always be an option, especially in the early game when your section of units is rather low. Every regiment, even those in the reserves, have a ticking penalty to morale every hour of combat. They also have morale damage as they move on the map, so you will have to wait with your unit before you cannot just say go from Barcelona to Beijing in one go, because they will have no morale as they progress through just a few provinces. You have to wait, go to a province, wait, maybe restock them in some of your cities and so on, and then keep on going, right? So keep that in mind. The amount of food available in the provinces you go through is vital, of course, but also the distance, because organization keeps getting lost as you progress through provinces. A regiment that gets too low morale will leave their section until the end of combat and will be in the broken unit section. Also, remember, if you are, say, moving to engage an enemy army and you have like half morale because you've moved for quite a little bit, and the other army attacks you and they got full morale, even though you might have better units, you probably will lose because you're not going to have the morale to stay in the fight for so long. But that's also a very, very important thing that will make the game significantly more tactical than EU4 is right now. There are not enough regiments in a section to cover the frontage. There will be a chance for units in the reserve to reinforce that section. However, only enough units for the possible frontage of the battle attempts to reinforce each hour, meaning that having doomsday stacks has no advantage. So just having a buttload of units is not going to be as beneficial as it is in EU4. It's actually going to be detrimental because you're going to be consuming significantly more food and not have any sort of advantage because your frontage is going to be too small to sustain all those units. The broken unit section are the regiments that have been routed in the current battle. They will no longer participate in this battle at all, even if the regiments are still a part of an army that is engaged. A battle is over when one regiment has no regiments in the three front sections, or the army retreats due to no morale or a manual order to retreat. And we have here the Teutonic forces, which have 248 units on the left flank, 399 in the right flank, 545 in the center. We got none in reserve, broken units none. Also, we also see the military tactics and the discipline for this, and we also see here that this unit is starting to crack, I would assume. This is again work in progress, so keep that in mind. There are important new attributes to think about for units. The combat speed, this is how quickly units can move up from the reserve section to fill holes in another section. So say when one of your flanks collapses, you will have units moving from the other parts of your sections, from the center or from the other flank, and trying to fill in the gaps so you don't have a complete collapse of that flank, because then your enemy can just move in through there and circle you, and you're going to be schnappeldooped, basically. Frontage is a limited amount of regiments that fight from each section. Topology vegetation can reduce this, and some units may require more or less frontage. At the start of the game, a regular 100 size regiment uses the same frontage as is a full 3,600 men in the Napoleonic era. This is done to scale the numbers to feel properly historical while still getting good gameplay. So essentially what this means is whoever is going to have better technology and will be able to field more units in the front is going to win. Initiative: how quickly a unit can engage as soon as combat starts. Lighter units have higher initiative. So like we said earlier, after the dice roll has been given out, every unit is going to have a specific initiative, right? So if you have, say, crossbowmen and you have cavalry units in the same section, probably the cavalry units will be the ones to engage first because they will have likely more initiative because they're lighter units, more agile, and probably have more maneuver than the crossbowmen have. Crossbowmen is probably not the best example. Let's say pikemen, right? Now on the 31st of July, Johan again explains a lot about the logistics section of combat, as well as more information about how combat in general work. One very important change happening in EU5 compared to EU4 is that whenever you assign a leader, you cannot unassign him for 12 months. So you need to wait for 12 months before you can assign him another leader to that particular army. Now the question is, can you just create a new army and assign all your units to the new army and then you can get a new leader? Because if that's the case, then this is pointless. Just pointing it out. So I hope that it's not going to be as easy to create new armies, or I don't know, some system for that. But I like the idea because indeed it will make it a lot more tactical and more important how you deploy your characters. It's really, really good. Reinforcing regiments. Whilst your levies do not reinforce, your regular regiment will attempt to reinforce if you still have manpower and get access to the goods they require. So that means whatever you levy at the start of the war, that's it. Once you start losing units to attrition, that means your regular pops that have become levies, you're not going to get them back. Just like in CK3, they're dead until you disband the levies and raise the levies again later down the line. The second part is, remember, your regular units will continuously use a small amount of manpower, and then not only that, they lose more manpower when they have attrition and when they lose said manpower in combat. And the only way for them to get back to reinforce their regiments and get back that manpower up is to be in a friendly you cannot get units for your regiments outside of your provinces. You can only do it in your own provinces or in your allies' provinces with some asterisks, so keep that in mind. We'll talk about that in a few moments. Also very important, of course, get access to the required goods. So even though you have manpower, if you don't have the guns, if you don't have the leather or whatever else is required to reinforce that regiment, you will not be able to reinforce said regiment. A regiment that is part of an army that is retreating, is in combat, loaded on ships, or currently taking attrition losses will not be able to reinforce. So keep that also in mind. When these things happen, plus when they are not in friendly provinces, when there's not enough manpower, when there's not enough goods alongside the manpower, they will not reinforce. So it's significantly more harsh than it is in EU4, meaning that wars in EU5 are going to be less, and whenever you do have a war, it's going to be significantly more impactful because it's going to crush your economy, it's going to crush your population. So only have wars if you're sure you're going to be winning there, sonny boy. A regiment can only reinforce in your owned locations and in locations owned by somebody you are fighting a war together with when that location is currently not occupied. So say you're allied to someone, you're fighting against someone, your provinces and the allies' provinces are where you get your shit back. The second your units step onto non-allied, non-owned territory, you will not recover. We have here current strength for this particular regiment. 5 manpower will join infantry number 17 each month. That's a base of 5%, and because of access to good times 1. This is the current strength 84, maximum strength 100 for that regiment. So once it reaches 100, it stays at that, of course. So that means 5 units, 5 manpower for infantry regiment 17 is actually quite a bit. One thing that has taken its inspiration from Hearts of Iron series is the fact that when an army is moving, they will slowly be losing morale, as I said earlier. This creates the natural flow of armies marching and then resting, and not just marching across Europe and then joining a battle. Again, this is a precursor to us getting more of a total war style on the grand map more than anything else for your unit. Also, bigger armies beyond a certain size will march slower, where the size is based on the total frontage it is fielding. If you attach units to other units, they will move slower. Also, the attached units will move slower to show that the military organization in the late medieval era was rather limited. Now, eventually, as you progress in ages, this penalty penalty will be reduced with the age of revolutions. It's going to be completely cut out. No more penalty for this. That's also when you get the march to the sound of the guns military advance, which is this here. So that is basically technology, right? They call advances now, sorry. This advance will allow an army to automatically react if another army of ours is in an adjacent location and it enters combat, and then quickly marches to join that combat. So yeah, this basically automatically will allow armies to join other armies in combat. This also confirms what I said earlier, that on the map, if you have two armies fighting, a third army can join, but it's not going to be automatic until you get this particular technology. So keep that also in mind. And this also kind of makes me feel like, again, it reinforces my theory of a little bit of total war influence. Food and armies, very, very important. So in EU5, a standard infantry regiment can carry a few months of rations with them, and when they're gone, they're gone. Essentially, when a unit runs out of food, it will start deserting and dying. So if you're sieging a province and you don't have food, your army is going to evaporate. So you need to make sure you have enough food for however long it's going to take to siege down a province, or you're going to lose the entire army if you don't. Kind of similar to how it works in Imperator Rome for that matter. And CK3. How to get food for your armies? If they're stationed in your own locations, they will take food from the local supply. You got to be careful when you station armies, because they can cause the local population to starve if that province in which they're stationed in does not produce enough food to sustain the army also, and not just the population. If you want to get food from allies and other countries, you need to negotiate a treaty. So you cannot just go to your allies' lands and just grab food from their provinces. So that's a separate, complete separate diplomatic option onto itself. This is not always something every country will accept for obvious reasons, because you can starve out their population and they got nothing to gain. If there is a treaty, I would assume you have to pay them monthly for the maintaining that treaty. That would make sense. Your subjects have no say in this though, and most types of subjects give this implicity. So your vassals and so on automatically give you the ability to take food from their provinces when you're stationed there. We've already explained the food capacity for armies. This is what it looks like, and the consumption is based on the amount of units and the type of units that you have, and then you can increase the amount of food storage, or capacity as it's called, by getting more camp followers. Now take note, when you are at war, you can steal the food from occupied provinces. That is also something you can do. You cannot reinforce your units, but you can steal their food. If you control the capital of a province, you can steal the food of the local populace there to feed your army. If your army is in a hostile location where you cannot get local food because they don't have any, you can try to trace access up to 2 locations away through control locations to get the food. Okay, that's a nice little feature. You cannot reach your own location at that distance, so basically a sort of a proto-logistics train for your armies in essence is what he's talking about here. First of all, there's the supply depot within range, so that's an actual building. Your armies will draw food from that supply depot, your own supply depot. A supply depot can be created by any army and can deposit food until its maximum storage capacities, and any army within range can withdraw from it. Any army can gather food from their homeland and deposit it into the depot of their space. There are advances increasing the capacity of your deposit as well. So this is basically something you place on the map, and you can store a lot of food in this depot before you start a war. So when the war starts, you have the supply depot that you can rely on for food for that army for the duration of the war. That is a massive game changer. From a logistics perspective, I fucking love this game. I want to make love to it right now. Please, I need to play EU5. Oh my god, please, I need it. I need it so badly. Okay, we need to calm down. We need to calm down. All right, so you also have capacities for the navies to provide logistic support as well. There's 2 unit abilities that can be done for them. Gather food will take food from any adjacent province you own, and your fleet can store food depending on the food carrying capacity of the ships. Distributing food allows a navy to act like a floating supply depot, and your armies can get food from. That is really cool, because historically that is what happened a lot. Like for example, Alexander's primary logistics train, when he started conquering the Persian Empire, he had a land train, also a logistics train, but the main one for parts of his campaign were by ship. And not only, the Romans also relied on ship food supplies and logistic supplies with equipment and everything during their campaigns. This is very important throughout history, and up until modern times even, it's been a thing, right? Till today. You also can steal food from enemies in a battle when they're defeated, as a defeated army cannot protect their entire baggage train as they try to escape. Whoa! Again, very historical, nice little tactical thing you can do. Now, sieges and occupation. Take note, there are locations without any fortifications, and these will just basically be taken taken instantly. You just need to have an army with a single full strength regiment to take that particular location. Like in EU4, you can siege down provinces as long as you have a full strength regiment. And then you also have locations with fortifications, which you have to siege down, and these locations have a zone of control, so the provinces around that fortification will be under the control and of the fort, and units cannot pass through those provinces. They have to siege down the fort. It's the exact same system like EU4. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. The exact same system. Small alterations, but basically the same system. We have here the siege progress in Pluk. I'm sorry, is that how you say it? Is a Pluk? Yeah, I'm sure it's Pluk. Base siege phase is 30 days, and that's influenced by offensive ability, fort maintenance, literacy of clerics, no clue why, offensive impact from the Teutonic Order, army tradition, and offensive societal value. As you can imagine from what I said so far, food has a massive impact on how you plan your military campaign, as it will affect how long you can sustain the siege. So the way that it works, guys, is like this. Every 30 days when you get a new phase, you might progress. You might get disease outbreak, status quo, supply shortage, food shortage, defenders deserting, and so on. And then there's a specific chance for all of this to happen based on a dice range. So it's possible that a fort can stay without getting captured for thousands of days or be taken in, I don't know, 100 days. Who's to say, right? That does mean that the amount of food you have is vital. If you don't have enough food to bunker down for a long siege, you will get schnappeldude. Johan also mentions that the zone of control for a fort is basically the same like it is an Imperator, where if you take a fort, all locations within the zone of control will start changing to you. The same goes for the capital of a province. If you take the capital of a province, all the other locations within that province will change to you. So obviously it's smart to have a fort in every single capital of a province if you don't want to lose that province without a fight. The zone of control rules are basically copy-pasted from Imperator Rome, and in the Age of Revolutions you have a technology that allows you to ignore zone of control altogether. There's also different methods of recruiting. You have the ability to rush the training of a regiment before it's ready, and as such it's going to have less strength, or you can spend more time in training with your regiment and then it's going to start with higher experience. So for the case of this particular regiment here, it starts with 20 experience, but it takes 50% longer to recruit this. So obviously if you're not at war, you're not in a rush to get units, you probably want to do this for all the units that you're going to be spawning in. Next week is going to talk about the naval part of the game, and I think that's going to be extremely juicy. Let's face it, there is no forced march mechanic. Instead, dropping your auxiliaries and artillery, which is significantly slower, the camp followers and artillery, will make your army actually faster. So army speed is going to be a big deal in the next game for sure. Confirmed, we're going to have an in-game chat for multiplayer. He says he's a big fan of that. You can bribe mercenaries so they can switch over to your side, and that's pretty much the gist of the answers in the comment section. If you guys enjoyed this video, you want to see more, you have a lot of EU5 dedicated videos in the description, and don't forget to use my code if you like to get Vicky 3, EU4, or any other game for yourself. Link in description also. Love you all, and I'll see you in the next one.